Conference championship weekend absolutely delivered. Welcome back to Three and Out. We have a lot to talk about. As you can see on Mr. Allen's screen, we have one game that we were particularly excited about. We'll get into that more a little bit later. But a lot of fireworks. The night slate of Saturday looked like at the beginning it was not going to be very good, and then it shaped up into a beautiful evening. A lot of great football to watch. But fellas, before we get into it, how we doing?
Can't complain. Hand up. I will be the first to admit. I went to bed at halftime of the night slate. We'll get into this later about the Georgia game. It was hell and a half. I mean, any overtime game, let alone conference championship up for grabs. That'll exhaust anybody. So I had to call it a night, but I regret that a little bit. But I caught the highlights. I'm up to speed. So ready to get into it.
No, that's valid. Kirby's called this team mentally resilient. I, however, am not as mentally resilient. I was a bit drained after that one, personally. A few years added on or taken off of the lifespan potentially, but
yeah, especially in back-to-back weeks of heading into overtime. But doing well. Obviously, in a much better mood than if things had gone the other way on Saturday.
Yes.
Yeah. We have to force us to record if things had gone.
I was gonna say we might not be recording right now. We probably would be just
probably would be.
A very we recorded after the Alabama loss. That one was a very somber episode, so this would be on the same wavelength. However, luckily enough, we're here and alive barely. So hanging on in there. We'll talk a lot more about the Georgia game later, though. But before we get into all of that, we're going to go ahead and get into our dogs of the week, because there's some guys that put on some very big performances, carried their teams to conference championships. So since I'm already talking, I can go ahead and get my take out of the way, my dog of the week. This is going to be a bit of a homer take, so sue me. If you don't want to hear it, skip ahead maybe a minute or two. But I know the stats maybe weren't there, but Gunnar Stockton coming in the second half of the Georgia game and, putting on a performance, didn't have the best. I mean, he came in, the first drive he led was a touchdown. After that, he had that pick towards the end of the game, but I think, the most meaningful stats he's taken in his entire college football career, and helping the Dogs come back from behind to win the SEC championship in the year that they've had, cannot be overlooked. And that taking that hit in the end, that was targeting and then was reversed, which I think, upon review, probably rightfully so, but hanging on to the ball, biggest play of the game. One of the biggest plays of the game, in my opinion, because if you would have fumbled that, targeting would have been reversed, game over. So he put on a hell of a performance, and, obviously the Georgia defense played well, and we'll get into that later in our recap, but arguably had a better performance than Carson Beck, at least on the ground, provided the spark that the Dogs needed to get back in the game. So, Gunnar Stockton, you are my dog of the week. I think my first dog who is the dog of the week. So
yeah. I feel like we kind of subconsciously try to overcompensate for our bias by not giving it to a Georgia player.
I tried, but I couldn't ignore it. He was going to be that or honorary. Either way, I think he deserved it. I couldn't imagine that moment. It's the first meaningful snaps he's gotten in his Georgia career, and on that stage, obviously Georgia's had the flip happen to them where the opposing team's backup quarterback comes in and leads a comeback victory. So it was nice to be on the other side of that, and it would not have been possible without Mr. Stockton himself. So big ups to him.
Yeah, I think the only other time we've mentioned a Georgia player was Jalen Walker. Back in the first Texas game.
One of the few defensive players that have won Dog of the Week, I believe. Usually goes to
I believe so.
Guy.
Yeah, a little easier to pad the stats there as an offensive player.
For sure.
Speaking of, hate for my last pre-bowl season Dog of the Week to be a quarterback. However, I think all things considered, Cade Klubnik had himself an evening here in Charlotte. Man went 24 for 41, not great, but 262 and 4 touchdowns. Heavy emphasis on the 4 touchdowns because, for those of us that watched the game, Clemson needed all 4 of those passing touchdowns to take care of business. Also added 21 yards on rushing attempts. So, but I mean, also I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention where'd he go? Nolan Hauser. I think I'm pronouncing that
Mhm.
correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He went 2 for 3 on field goals, but he hit the one that mattered at the end. I think it was officially clocked at a 56, 57-yard field goal attempt. Um, Also went 4 for 4 on his extra points, but to ice the game like that, in that environment where your team is backs against the wall, you're currently being the victim of a 17-point comeback in the fourth quarter by SMU to put the game away and kill any momentum that SMU would have probably taken over into overtime. Um, just absolutely fantastic, and just a great performance by Clemson and SMU. But
Mhm.
obviously, scoreboard implied Clemson had the better performance. So
Yeah. Hell of a game.
Yeah.
absolutely,
I guess it's my turn. Yeah, I'm staying on offense. We are going to the Big 12 championship in
Mm,
Dallas. This one really wasn't much of a game. The 2 games you guys had described were great
Mm.
games, but
yeah,
my guy is one of the reasons this was nowhere near
yeah.
the game it was billed to be. And that, of course, is Cam Scatabo, the running back for the Arizona State Sun Devils. After a little research, Scatabo in Danish translates to treasure town.
Ooh,
Jesus,
I
So,
like that.
just keep that in mind when I read these stats to you. All right, 16 carries, 170 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and then through
God,
the air, 2 receptions, 38 yards, and a touchdown. This dude, he's a
that's
bowling
crazy.
ball. He
Yeah.
is electric. Anytime he touches the ball, it just feels like he's breaking 2, 3 tackles each time. It's ridiculous. They even had him
Mhm.
in the Wildcat at one point, and it was early on in the game. The game was still pretty close. Um, Nothing was really going in this particular play. He was getting pushed further and further into the backfield, wasn't going down. Since he's the quarterback, he can throw the ball. So he just decides to, he's 20 yards in the backfield, just decides to yeet it across the line of scrimmage. He's out of the tackle box, ends up an
Mhm.
incomplete pass, saves them 20 yards in field position. It was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. So,
I love that you mentioned that because I was going to bring that up. I was like, I
yeah.
don't know if you watched this game or like this early on. I was like, yeah, I'm like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I'm like, what is he doing? And
Yes.
then it lands safely across the line of scrimmage. I was like, all right, kid's a
There you
genius.
go.
Okay,
Hmm.
yeah, sure.
He knows the rules better than we do. So
Yeah,
just, let
for
him do what
sure.
he wants. I think Dillingham actually said something about that. Um, This is, yeah, from his post-game presser. Kenny Dillingham on the Cam Scatabo throwaway. Don't do it. That's what was going through my head. But that's Scat. He does incredible things.
Mhm. What
Crazy.
a that's what a heads up play. I feel like a lot of guys in that moment that wouldn't have even crossed their minds that, oh, I'm technically an eligible passer right now.
It's true.
Um, so no, and I mean especially looking at his stat line, the production on the amount of carries that he had, averaging 10.6 yards per carry, is pretty insane. He is sneakily one of the better running backs in the entire country. I like him a lot, and I think Arizona State is going to be fun to watch in the playoff.
Yep.
I mean, they keep talking about how much weight he lost. I mean, he's still 5'11", weighs 215. Like
Yeah, he's a bowling ball.
he's still a stout guy. But yeah, I'm like, damn, how much did he weigh before? But no, he definitely has the breakaway speed now. So I think he's become moved up a couple draft boards, if I had to guess.
Absolutely. No, he's made himself some money when the off season comes for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but anyways, those are our dogs of the week. Let us know in the comments who your pick would be if you agree with ours. If you have anybody to add to that, we would love to hear from you and who you thought had the best performance of this past conference championship weekend. Moving on into some recap of these games, we can go in chronological order. I will, by courtesy, start on Friday night and see if anybody has some thoughts on those games. I know they weren't really much to watch. Unfortunately, you had the American Conference Championship with Army and Tulane, and then the Mountain West with UNLV and Boise State. Both, I wouldn't call both blowouts, but definitely better football played the next day. I don't know if either of you gentlemen have anything to add for either of those games. I'm pulling up scores now. Army beat Tulane 35-14, and then Boise State beat UNLV 21-7.
Army took belt to ass on Tulane.
They did.
It was. I watched that game. I had both that and the Mountain West Championship up. Oh my lord, it was awful. Like Tulane obviously deflated after dropping a game to Memphis, I believe. 2 weeks
Sounds
ago.
right.
Which kind of like took away any and all mojo they had of having an outside shot at being the G5 representative. And you could tell. I mean, they just looked uninspired. Army not only won the game, they won the uniform battle. They won about everything. And then Boise State, I mean, it was just an ugly game for the UNLV offense and Haj Malik Williams. That man was seeing ghosts out there. It was ugly. The front seven from Boise State showed up. Ashton Genty had a quiet game by Genty standards. Only had 209. And I mean, he got the one touchdown. So I think he's under 300 yards away from Barry Sanders' record, but a lot of people have put a huge asterisk by that because he's doing it in more games. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still impressive. However, I think that asterisk is probably necessary. You can't take away from what Barry Sanders did in that amount
he
of
did it in
games.
11 games.
In 11 games. He's one of one. Genty is a baller, but Barry Sanders was not human. So no, Genty played well. They're feeding that man. Looking at the box score, 32 carries. I mean, he composes most of their offense. Which I mean, if I had a guy like that, a workhorse who could take that amount of touches, there's not a lot of guys in today's college football who get that amount of touches and can play an entire game like that. So obviously they're feeding him and it's working. So I'm excited to see their matchup in the playoff, which we might talk about a little bit later. I would love it if they were able to win a game. I mean, they have a first round bye, so that's how highly seeded they are in this upcoming playoff. But that should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Anything else on Friday before we move on?
I like the expression "living and dying by Genty." I think that's kind of going to be the strategy for them in the playoff, especially. Yeah. I mean, they're playing the winner of what? I mean, we can get into this later. Penn State and SMU. So, I mean, the only other Boise State player to attempt to rush is their starting quarterback. So,
Madsen.
Pretty nuts.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, they're going to get, and we'll get into this more later, but all I'll say is that box is going to be loaded.
Yeah.
They're going to have to beat somebody through the air. Can they do that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Madsen's kind of flashed at points.
Madsen's not bad. He's not bad.
No. I mean, he's got 158 in this game and a touchdown. So, like,
he didn't do nothing.
This style of offense reminds me of when Derrick Henry was at Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
They handed that man the rock 40 times a game. He got his 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. And they'd win the game 21-17 or something like that. But I don't know. If y'all remember the playoff that year, that was the Jake Coker coming out party where they would just run play action 17 times in the first half and score 6 touchdowns. So I'm wondering if that's going to be the game plan, but obviously we're not going to know until
I was going to say the same thing. When you have a back like that going up against the best competition you've seen all season, you're going to have a very good play action game plan, in my opinion. However, we can save a little bit of this for later because we may be talking about this anyways. No, I initiated it. I instigated. I stirred the pot. And we got going. We talk ball and we keep going. So let's get back on track. Absolutely. Getting back on track, we're going to go over to Saturday, the big day for conference championships, starting off at noon. The Dr. Pepper Big 12 championship. Arizona State and Iowa. I didn't know it was sponsored by Dr. Pepper. I'm looking at ESPN. Apparently it is. Anyways, Arizona State had their way with Iowa State. Final score was 45-19. If you didn't watch our Dogs of the Week video, go watch it. We talked about the player of the game in this game, Cam Scatabo, one of the better running backs in the entire country, had himself a hell of a day. And Arizona State seems to be getting hot at the right time, and secured themselves a first-round bye in the playoff. And I don't know if I wouldn't see them right now. I think they're going to play a hell of a game. Whoever, I forget who's in their side of the bracket, but whoever they play, I think that's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, for sure.
They've won 6 straight, by the way.
Go ahead, Noah. Hot at the right time. So you can do that in college football now.
We're talking about all the success, Kenny Dillingham, and obviously Cam Scatabo is great. He's a senior, and all the talk about Arizona State, all the casual college football fans, it's like, oh, they're this year's TCU. I disagree. I think they're here to stay because they got young 43-year-old head coach Kenny Dillingham, great coach. Sam Levitt, their starting quarterback, is a true freshman. He'll be back. He'll be better. So, honestly, I think they're going to be contending for years to come, especially in that Big 12, which, this past year, the Big 12 has been
flipped on its head, dude.
Yeah, flipped on its head. That's a great way to describe it. Wide open. So, here we go. Arizona State, some call it a sleeping giant. I did not. I was not familiar with their game as a sleeping giant. But I think they're here to stay.
Just to clarify what Brandon was mentioning earlier, they play the winner of Clemson, Texas.
There you go.
In Atlanta. We can get into that later. But no, I agree. I think that I don't think I've heard this nickname, but I think it fits too good to not say. Like the Scat Pack is what I'm going to now refer to Scatabo as. Like that dude,
love that.
He's boxy, but like has a different gear that just as soon as he gets through the front 7, that boy is gone, and he is running over any DB that's going to stand in his way. And
Drew,
also,
I hope you know I'm clipping that. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make an edit out of that. Did you come up with that on the spot? You can lie and say yes, because I would.
No, I didn't come up with it on the spot. I came up with it like while I was at work today.
But you came up with it.
Yeah, I did.
I love that. That is hilarious.
No, the kid's a baller.
I'm gonna search that on Twitter, see if anyone has made that.
We need to trademark that. We need to contact him and get some merch going. That's awesome.
Man, just let you know. But anyway, on top of everything, the balls on Kenny Dillingham to go for it on 4th and 1 on inside his own at least 40. I could have sworn it was inside his own 30. When Iowa State just like loaded all 11 dudes in the box to stop the QB sneak or the halfback dive. This man has the balls to run a play action and have a wide receiver running butt booty naked down the sideline and turns it into 6. I'm like, oh my, this is ridiculous. I'm not gonna lie. This game was a pick'em to start. I had Iowa State just because I wanted the points. Screw me, I guess. Yeah. It's fine. It's only $5. It's all good.
Hey man, Vegas didn't Vegas didn't think that either. So I don't think usually the money is right a lot of the time. So can't fault yourself for that. Arizona State just looked dominant, and like I said before, this is the perfect time for them to get hot.
Yes.
And in the new format of college football, you lose a couple games in the beginning of the season. It's not over. You win 6 in a row. You get hot for the playoffs. You get rest in the first round bye. So props to them and what they've done. Wide open Big 12 and absolutely took advantage of that.
On paper, Arizona State was at a disadvantage because their number 1 wide receiver got injured. That's really the only reason I picked Iowa State.
Yeah.
So,
it didn't matter, though. They had Scat Pack. He took over.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on Big 12?
About the nickname, Drew. It's known amongst the ASU fan base, but I haven't seen any national media pundits use it. So let's push it.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like
it.
We could probably make an edit of Scatabo highlights. I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
Yeah, we were talking about merch earlier. Like a Scat Pack T-shirt would be hard.
Yeah,
I love that. We'll talk shop.
Behind the scenes look at the 3-0 boys.
Yeah. No, that's gold. I love that. Anyways, we'll move on to the next game of the day, which we all have some thoughts about potentially. It's the SEC championship, Georgia and Texas in an overtime battle. As you can see there, that was the outcome of the game. As a Georgia fan, we're all Georgia fans, so this is going to be Homer talk. If you want to skip forward, I don't blame you, but if you're a Georgia fan, I'm glad to have you here. We're going to talk through this real quick because after the Georgia Tech game, a little emotionally scarred from overtime games. I'm glad they ended it in the first overtime. I wasn't really hopeful that was going to be the case, but I feel like we could probably talk about this game for an hour, so I'm trying to condense my thoughts really quickly. Obviously, Gunnar Stockton, biggest story of the game. Carson Beck, who seems to be out at least for the Sugar Bowl. We might talk more about that later. Stockton came in and balled. Defense was a big story of this game for Georgia as well. I believe 6 sacks or somewhere around there. And then this may not be right. I heard 15 tackles for loss.
Yes.
So Georgia's defense came alive at the right time, just like last time they played Texas in Austin. And Dalen Everett seems to be Texas's kryptonite, which, if you're a Georgia fan, he's not the best every other game. He's definitely been improving, but there has been some times I've yelled at my television because of this man. So I think if the defense continues to play at that level, Georgia will be fine with Stockton. Just need to game plan for him. But anyways, those are my thoughts, fellas. I know you have thoughts.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I mean, to, like you said, try to condense, because I know we could really just go on for days about this. I guess I'll start at the play before halftime. I think it was the stupidest thing they could have done to attempt that Hail Mary. You're 4 yards out of your excellent kicker's field goal range. Why not send him out there to try to tie the game? Keep your quarterback healthy. Freak injuries like that only seem to happen on, plays like that. It's just so crazy and baffling to me that, all of that, the game turned on its head like that. But luckily, Gunnar Stockton came in, calmed the nerves of the team, and ultimately just marched down the field. And that first half drive showed me a lot. I really like how he came in. He didn't blink.
First drive of the second half.
First drive of the second half. That
Undermeant what you stood.
Yes.
Yep.
That I believe it was a 3rd and 2. He just throws an absolute strike.
Oh, it was a laser.
Smith.
And Arian Smith caught it.
Yep.
Caught the ball. And it was a fastball too.
Yeah.
I mean, damn. So no, I don't mean to interrupt you. That shit had me fired up that entire drive. I can't lie. We were.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was nice.
And I know he was your dog of the week. If you haven't watched that video, go check it out now. I was gonna mention this then, but I thought it'd be better to wait. The overtime drive, like that hit that he took, most quarterbacks slide.
Yeah.
And I looked at the play-by-play. That was 2nd and 8. He gained 8 yards to move the chains. It is a completely different outlook if he slides down there and we have a 3rd and 2 at the 6.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So put your body on the line, get the first down, set up the game-winning play. That took stones. That took cojones.
Yes. I think that Kirby, considering the quarterback room and the lack of a starter potentially moving forward, I think Kirby might be having sliding lessons. So that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Listen, Gunnar, really appreciate what you did in the SEC championship, but slide. All right. We got two downs to get 2 yards. I think we can do it. Hopefully. Anyway, yeah, I mean, not really trying to sound like a broken record here. Gunnar Stockton, thank God for coming in and doing the damn thing. And I tried to make an edit on TikTok about like how Gunnar Stockton showed flashes of Stetson Bennett. Maybe a little read option, a little, I don't see anything. I might as well see what I can get with my legs, to set us up for success in the next down. And that was really cool. Like, it was really refreshing to see a quarterback not only come in with the lack of meaningful snaps that he had and have that confidence, but have it with a way that we have seen success in the past. It
Mhm.
was also really nice to see what I genuinely think happened is that the offensive line, the receivers, and the running backs all knew. Listen, Carson Beck's not here. He's not going to save us. We can't depend on his arm. We've got this kid Gunnar Stockton who is a good quarterback, but we're going to have to rally around the kid to set this up for success. And I think that that was the spark that the team needed because I mean, as former offensive linemen and fullbacks in this call right now, like you understand what it's like to like actually shoulder the team. Like, okay, we got to put the team on our back. The run game has to um, put up numbers because we don't know if this kid's going to be able to deliver.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Can't
for
rely on
sure.
them on 3rd and long. You
Yeah,
gotta make his
exactly.
Mhm.
job easier. Yeah.
We have to stay ahead of the
Absolutely.
chains.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the
Agreed.
defense just lights out. I love to see it. Very reminiscent of the defenses of old. Um,
Mhm.
Great
Needed
game.
it.
Loved it. Go dogs. But I am really excited to see what Gunner looks like with 2 weeks of first team reps. I'd be very interested to see how he's able to improve from SEC championship to Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, I'm very hopeful for him. I just have a couple more things. I want to give a shout out to Trevor Etienne. I was low key talking shit at the beginning of the game. Admittedly, I will admit it, but and I mean at halftime when Carson got hurt, I was thinking we need somebody to step up. Obviously, the offensive line stepped up, and Etienne did more than his part. In that second half of football, he is also Texas's kryptonite. Didn't go for a hat trick this time, but had two of them, including the game-winning touchdown. So big ups to him, and yeah, they rallied around Gunner. I do want to mention the fake punt. One of the
yes,
better calls from Kirby. I saw it broken down. So at that point, Thorson had got hurt, but our backup kicker was back there to take the punt. It wasn't even the backup punter. So there was no doubt in anybody's mind. It was like, oh, you can't audible. Well, I mean, he's a kicker, so he probably could have punted it, but
yeah,
that was a set call. They had a look, and I mean, that was on your own what 30,
30-ish. Yeah.
yeah.
and that sparked a drive that didn't end in a touchdown, but you kick a field goal, and it was kind of a death march-esque drive where you drain time off the clock, which at that point in the game with your young and experienced quarterback, shorten the game, don't give time for mistakes, stuff like that. So that was a critical point in the game. Great coaching by Kirby, and from here on out for Georgia, I think the biggest thing winning these playoff games is going to have to depend on the defense and the scheme that the coaches come up with on both the offense and defensive side of the balls. Um, if I am Mike Bobo, I am looking at Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech's offenses. I'm putting in some quarterback design power plays because that's what Gunnar Stockton brings to the table.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful for him. I like you said, Drew. I saw an edit on TikTok. It was to Like Him by Tyler the Creator, and it was Gunnar Stockton and Stetson. She got me a little emotional. But he's the Stetson Bennett archetype. So
Yeah.
Yes.
Gotta use it.
I so that's what I tried to do, but I don't think my editing skills, especially on my phone during the game, really
that's valid.
just trying to distract myself from what was going on. But
Mhm.
anyway, 2 points that I just remembered. Shout out to Carson Beck for coming in to be able to hand the ball off because I believe you, Brandon, said that you saw that he was unable to grip a football in
That's
the
what I
locker.
heard. Yeah. Mhm.
So shout out to him for coming in to just be able to take the snap, turn around,
Yeah.
and hand it off.
I got something here too. I don't know if the next thing you have to
No.
say is about this, but I did have something to add.
About Carson?
About like that last play. But
Go ahead. Take
okay.
it. Take it.
I
Yeah.
was just gonna say, on that last play, like you can tell the impact that the Stockton scramble and the hit had. It kind of galvanized that Georgia O line, and Beck comes in with one arm.
Yeah.
This Texas defense still could not stop the run. Like, what did you think? He was gonna
Mm-mm.
throw it? No,
Why did they not put 9, 10, 11 in the box? That's my question.
makes no
It
sense.
it didn't make any sense. I didn't know if you're going to mention it, Noah, but I saw Tate's post game interview. He said that they didn't know Carson was coming in.
Oh yeah.
They didn't know it was him until they heard his voice behind him in the huddle. So I'm sure that also provided a spark on this last play. End it right here.
Yeah.
And they did. So that also got me fired up. This is a very meaningful win for Kirby
Absolutely.
Smart and a hell of a coaching job.
Yeah.
So
my one critique that I have coaching wise in question, I don't know if y'all know the answer or seen the answer on a post game presser or on Twitter or whatever. On the play that Gunner threw his interception late in the game, why are we throwing the ball there? We're in field goal range and we can run the ball and depend on our defense, take it all the way down to the 2-minute timeout and then kick a field goal, or force Sark to take a timeout before the 2-minute timeout, kick a field goal, and
yeah,
then kick it away, with Texas only having one timeout to go. I'm just really curious why we didn't run the ball there. I understand getting a first down almost ices the game, but I don't know. Curious in y'all's thoughts. I don't know if it's even worth a discussion because I know we
no, I mean,
probably need to move on to the next game, but just
yeah,
one problem I had.
briefly. I understand. I mean, obviously they're taking the approach. You get a first down, it's done. So I get that. But also, if you run the ball, you probably set yourself up fourth and medium or short. You could go for it if you wanted to, even in that situation. And I mean, at that point, we had been calling more conservative play calls up until that point, and I'm not always a fan of that. But in this situation, I think it's 100% warranted. You just had an interception. You can go up 6 points and lean on your defense with all the momentum. I would agree that that's probably the move there. Obviously, hindsight's 2020, but I guess I just wanted to go for the kill.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. So,
But anyhow, we could talk about this for hours. Unless Noah, you have anything else to add? Any closing statements?
No, that was it. I just wanted to
All right,
give Carson his flowers for being able to come
absolutely.
back in. That's it.
For sure. Go Dogs. And yeah,
Go
moving
Dogs.
on to the Big Ten Championship. The first of the night slate. I'm not going to lie, I watched more of the ACC than this. I had both on, but I feel like the ACC in the end got more of my attention. Oregon trying to pull away in the end. Penn State was kind of pesky. They stuck around. They're scrappy. Not a bad football team. Just looking at the box score real quick. I hate to be a box score watcher, but I mean, it looks like Oregon for the most part played a pretty clean game.
They did.
So they're the team to beat. Obviously, the 1 seed pulled the harder part of the bracket, but
Yeah.
they are still the team to beat. Have a first round bye. Penn State can't get it done. I think what the Penn State did was respectable. Sticking around in there through a couple of Drew Aller interceptions. So I mean, I think Penn State could grab a couple wins, but I didn't really have any sense that they were going to win the game coming into this. So
No.
I don't know what y'all think about this, but
I mean, with Oregon going up 7 at halftime, I was like, okay. I think, and then especially with them being up 14 going into the fourth, I thought this game was over, and then Penn State does enough to keep it a close game. My huge question with Penn State is, where is this offense when they're playing Ohio State? Where is this offense when they're playing Michigan last year? It just seems that they let the other team determine how this game is going to go. They have the offensive capabilities. I'm not saying that Oregon's defense is as good as Ohio State's, but it's comparable, right? I mean, it's in the same ballpark. But it's Ohio State's okay, we're going to go into Happy Valley. We're going to run the damn ball, and y'all are going to play the exact same way as us. And then you go to meet Indy, and all of a sudden Oregon's oh, we're going to throw the ball, and we're going to have some explosive plays. And Penn State's oh, wait, we can do that too. That's my biggest question mark about the Nittany Lions is I don't know. I genuinely don't know what's going on because they have the ability. They have the offensive firepower. They did this against USC a couple of months ago. Yes, sir.
I've got a take here.
Sure.
It's coaching. It's preparation.
You think he gets caught up in
I think
the prep?
they are so vanilla in their scheme during the week for each opponent I mean, it was do or die in this game. I mean, we saw them like they looked hungry. They they pushed the ball down the field because they had to. They knew they couldn't play their game, run the ball, dink and dunk down the field all that much because Oregon would blow them out of the water if they did that for
Mm-hmm.
the first 2 quarters of the game.
Yes.
They had to keep up, and they played like their lives depended on it. And I have never seen Penn State play like this.
And Tyler Warren touched the ball 7 times through the air for 84 yards. They actually used their best player.
Yep.
Crazy.
It's crazy. Like he only got the ball like 2 or 3 times in the Ohio State game for like a combined 18 yards or something like that. Like
For no good reason.
They actually schemed their best player to get the ball, and not only get the ball, but get the ball in space enough to where he can rack up almost 100 yards receiving.
Yeah. I mean, I think Penn State has the capability to be a great team, an elite team even. If you look at the roster, it's littered with talent. They have guys all over the board. I think they got to start trusting Drew Aller some more. I mean, I understand you kind of want to play damage control, and he has not been the best player. Obviously, they uncorked him a bit in this game. Had a couple picks, still some decent production, but Katron Allen and Nick Singleton are great, but if you're only running the ball the whole game, it becomes a bit predictable. Yeah. I think I would agree that their scheme kind of rose to the occasion, and it's going to need to be that if they want to make a push in the playoff. Yeah. Like I said, they have Katron Allen and Singleton are two of the better running backs in the entire world of college football, in my opinion. Along with Tyler Warren, who I don't know if he's a Mackey Award finalist, but he probably should be if he isn't.
That's the tight end award?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, he is a finalist.
He was all
along with the. Mm-hmm. So I mean, like I think they have the talent. I just don't know if I believe in the coaching in this scheme quite yet. Yeah. It looked better. It looked better against Oregon, and if Oregon is truly the number 1 team in the country, and you lose a 1 possession game to them in a conference championship, there's much worse ways to lose. Yeah. So they can always bounce back, but we'll have to see how they adapt in the playoff.
Number 1, shout out to Oregon for covering despite the Penn State offensiveness. Number 2, they might want to cover Tez Johnson. I'm not going to lie. I did not realize that he had this monster of a game. He had 11 receptions for 181 yards.
Oof. Probably should have been a dog, but
yeah, if you're watching the long form video, I go back. I change my dog of the week to Tez Johnson.
We'll make him an honorary right now. Yeah. Tez Johnson, all 3 of us, honorary dog of the week. What'd you say? 11 catches and 180 yards.
11 catches, 181 yards, only 1 touchdown, but like
still torched him.
Yeah, like you might want to cover.
He's a hell of a player.
But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like the conference that has now become offensive firepower. The game ended 16-19, and then the conference that has become defensive minded ended 45-37. So shout out to the Big Ten for the fireworks. Genuinely.
Absolutely. No, I love that. Usually in the years past, the Big Ten championship has been the winner of the game plus insert decently good Big Ten team here that year.
Sorry, so 22-19. My apologies.
You were talking about into overtime, though.
Yeah.
That's how I saw it. So if they watched the game, they would know that. Anyways, moving on, unless we have anything else, to the other game that started at 8 o'clock on Saturday, the ACC Championship, which also had some fireworks towards the end of the game. Don't remember exactly the score, but I do believe that Clemson pulled out in the beginning by at least a couple of possessions, to my knowledge.
Yes, correct.
But SMU scrapped their way back in the second half and had a chance to send it to overtime if it weren't for the Clemson kicker, whose name I'm not remembering, even though we talked about him in Dogs of the Week. Drew, I don't know if you remember him off the top of your head, but props to him.
Nolan Hauser
hit a 56-yard field goal to win this game.
57. Yeah.
In an outdoor stadium. That's a kick that NFL kickers would not all make.
Right.
And to win the
60.
Yes, dude, he fucking buried it. It's not like it squeaked over the bar.
Yeah, and to put Clemson in the playoff and win their conference, I mean, obviously Clemson with 3 losses, they lose their game. This game, their season's over. So,
Yep.
Yep. That was a hell of a moment for that kid in Clemson.
Lose this
Pretty
game
cool.
to play in the ReliaQuest Bowl
Mm-hmm.
or something like that.
Instead of Alabama. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious that that's the bowl game they're playing in. Anyways, but Klubnik had a game, 4 touchdowns, 262 yards. I'm trying to think of the rest of this game script if you guys want to help fill it in. I mean, I know SMU kind of had pulled a Georgia, had a second half performance.
As someone who had money on this game and watched the entire thing, I thought I was deceased, dead, and buried. When Clemson jumped out to a 21-7 lead in the first quarter. Now there were some SMU turnovers that contributed to that. And then they just couldn't get anything going in the second quarter. Going into halftime, it's 24-3. Like the announcers are even like on board. It's like, okay, because they're trying to keep ratings up. It's like, guys, please don't change the channel. I promise, SMU has one of the fastest offenses in the country. They're not out of this game just yet. And little did they know, SMU also has a defense, apparently, because they held Clemson to only 10 points in the second half. Outscored them 24-10 in the second half to be 18 seconds away from securing overtime. I mean, up until that final kick, they outscored them 17-0 in the fourth quarter. So just an absolute masterclass of an almost comeback by SMU.
Yeah.
But came up just short. And honestly, it came down to special teams. That's what the game, when games get like this and they're this close and the teams are this evenly matched, special teams comes into play. I mean, Clemson had a 40-yard kickoff return.
That was one hell of a return, dude.
It was a great return, but like he also broke like 4 tackles. So like, like
Adam
the special teams
Randall.
coordinator is gonna have to be Adam Randall. It's funny, like it's funny how like guys like Adam Randall, like the only people that know him are probably like Clemson diehards, right? Because he was like a highly touted kid out of high school, and then like slowly but surely, with how Clemson has been able to recruit, he's just fallen down the depth chart and become a special teams guy. And then all of a sudden, he breaks a 40-yard kickoff return that sets them up to win the ACC championship game, and now he's a Clemson legend.
Yep.
That is the beauty of college football, and that's why we're here. So there's your game script. There's all the names necessary to throw into your game script. Also, sorry, I want to give a shout out to the SMU quarterback, Kevin Jennings. I mean, good God, 50 attempts, completed 31 of them, 304 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have a pick, and I believe he also had a fumble, if I'm not mistaken. He did. He had a fumble. So, hot and cold, but they live and die by Kevin Jennings. So, SMU almost did enough, but they have the opportunity to resurrect themselves in the playoffs.
Yeah, luckily.
That's all that matters.
Luckily, the correct decision was made, and we can get more into that later. But I think if SMU would not have made it, it would have been a crime and an indictment on the world of college football. Don't play conference championships. And also, I love hearing Alabama cry. I love it. I don't want to get on my soapbox, but I think the out-of-conference scheduling is so tired. You lost 3 in-conference games to 6-6 Oklahoma, 6-6 Vanderbilt, and you scheduled Mercer.
Yeah. Did you see? So I saw where the Alabama athletic director put out a tweet about how like he's like, okay, so that you're incentivizing us to schedule out-of-conference cupcakes. It's like, well,
that wasn't the issue, guys.
That wasn't
We're missing the point.
Because your out of conference schedule was Mercer and the Sister Mary School for the Blind and Deaf.
Yeah.
They got community noted. Like the mods on Twitter.
Yeah, I saw that. That.
The mods on Twitter were like,
actually,
your out of conference opponents were Mercer and whoever the fuck else you played. So
I think it was like South Florida or something.
They played South Florida.
Stupid.
They played they did play Wisconsin, but I believe Tyler Van Dyke got injured in that game, and
he did.
It was a bruising from that point on. So I mean, don't lose to Oklahoma, maybe.
Yeah, it's not the out of
crazy thought.
had a problem with their boys. It was the mid to lower tier conference opponents that you had trouble with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I mean,
might be a good
we don't have
segue,
to,
fellas.
yeah, we don't have to talk too much about that. It's just I keep seeing that argument, and it's literally a brain dead take. I can't stand it.
Yep.
I mean, it's coping. They're coping, is what it is.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Hey, trust
outside
me,
of
we've been there.
I've done it before. No, trust me,
Yeah.
I've
Oh,
been
yeah.
there. All I'm saying is the only way you could have made that out of conference schedule easier is if you drop Wisconsin, who's at best a middling Big Ten team at this point, and replace them with another cupcake. Middling is probably
That's doing them a
too much.
favor.
Yeah, that's a bit much, but I don't know. That's my spiel on that. But
Yes.
oh man, the discourse in college football right now is kind of crazy. It's the most I've seen in the sport in a long time.
Yeah.
About the playoff and who should be in, but I think they got it right. It got leaked. Noah made a short form on that. First time ever that a college football playoff ranking has been leaked in its history. Shout out Brent McMurphy. People are getting mad at him. I just see him doing his job. That guy, I want to know who that guy knows because that is impressive. And I mean, obviously he knew somebody, if not in the room, close to somebody in the room who let something slip. So, I mean, props to him.
So Brett McMurphy is a part of the Action News Network, and like I was trying to explain this to my wife because like I told her like, hey, it got leaked before the show started that like SMU was going to make the playoffs, and she's like, well, A, how did he know that, and B, like why would he do that? I'm like, well, number one, he's a reporter, and number two, it's good to get the news out quickly if you're sure it's correct.
Yeah.
So
I'm pretty sure ESPN was his former employer. He used to
yes,
work for ESPN.
yes. So he jumped from ESPN. Yeah, he
Go on
jumped
to
from
Wikinger.
ESPN to the Action News Network. I listen to him every week. He's not like these are like professional gamblers on the podcast that make me lose not as much money as I normally would.
Valid.
He's not on every episode. He's only on one every week. But like he obviously knows ball. Like his affiliations lie with Oklahoma State. But I think with the down season they had this year, he really just poured himself into his craft, and it obviously paid off. Because if you know somebody that's willing to let something slip a couple minutes before the selection show, you're doing something right.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, he's like, a reporter, an insider. It's all about So, I mean, I can't fault him for that. I think it's pretty funny that that's the first time that's happened. I'd be curious to know the ins and outs of how that did happen. But that can be a nice little segue. We're going to talk a bit more about the playoff format briefly. Because I know we've had conversations about this before. We could probably talk for hours about how we could make a better format, and this could be better, and that could be better.
Yeah.
However, one big talking point I've seen online, even amongst the talking heads, former NFL or not NFL, college football coaches, and current coaches talking about the format where the conference champions get a first round bye, and it seems to be trending in the direction of people think that you should get an auto bid when you win your conference. Kind of like, I don't know if anybody, I know you two do, but anybody else, I know this is a college football podcast, but in college basketball, you win your conference, you get an automatic bid to the dance. However, it doesn't secure you a bye. You get seeded once you get a bid. So that's kind of the direction it seems to be trending in. Let them play the games. Let the conference championships get their conference champions rather get their auto bids, and then seed the field from there. I think I like that. I mean, it makes the most sense. But I will say that by giving the winner of the conference championship a first round bye, it does leave an incentive in that game. It provides more of an incentive to kind of counterpoint that, because I do think those games are becoming devalued. And if you were to take away that first round bye, that would only be furthering that narrative. So I don't know if they'll change it, but it seems like there's some consideration that's possibly going to be taking place.
Yeah.
I think the first thing you need to do is implement reseeding.
Yes.
Because I think that would also take care of Oregon kind of getting screwed over.
Yeah, agreed.
Like they get the one seed, and they arguably have like the second or first most difficult part of the bracket because they play the winner of Tennessee Ohio State, which will probably be Ohio State because it's in Columbus. We don't have to talk about that right
Hey
now.
now.
I'm just saying.
That's next week's episode, brother.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's next
I'm
week.
just saying. I'm just saying. Given home field advantage, Tennessee is going to have to go to Ohio in December.
Yeah.
I'm not calling the game right now, but I'm just saying, like, Vegas has said that Ohio State is the favorite. So,
Right.
operating under that assumption, they'll probably have to play Ohio State again.
Yeah.
That's not easy. Like, yeah,
No.
Ohio State lost to Michigan, but they were obviously in a look-ahead spot. Ohio State has arguably the most talented roster ever assembled.
Well, I mean,
So, like,
Ohio State took Oregon to the final play of the game.
yes,
and
it took a Dan Lanning masterclass coaching moment to throw a 12th man on the field to bump it down from 13 seconds to 3
Yeah.
or something like that. Like, if he doesn't do that, I don't know if they lose the game, but like
They might.
you give Ohio State's offense 10 more seconds to run their offense, and things can get crazy.
That's true.
But anyway,
You slide
all that
down
being
in
said,
enough time to get into field goal range, that's for sure.
yes, they were in field goal.
Yeah.
Reseeding is important. I think that's one thing
Mhm.
the NFL gets right. I don't know. I like conference championship games being incentivized. However, I understand the argument that like the ACC champion or the Big 12 champion doesn't deserve a first round bye.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, I get that. However, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm on the fence on this. Someone else talk, please.
I think reseeding definitely is a good idea, and I think it's a good first step because, I mean, looking at this, it's never going to be like any one system's going to be an end all be all, right?
Mhm.
Looking at the bracket right now, like I have it editing room full transparency. I threw the bracket up in our little window so like the viewers at home
Perfect.
can see it. It's just we're going to get to a point where, no format's the final format. We're going to be tweaking it the next 2-3 years. I think at the very least, reseeding is a first logical step, like you were saying, Drew, just because there's no way your number one overall seed, Big Ten champion, should be looking at a more difficult road than the team that they beat 2 days ago. Because Penn State, they play SMU, and then if they win, they go play Boise. That's and Oregon
they've
by
got
comparison is getting the winner of Tennessee, Ohio State, and then in all likelihood, probably Texas in the semifinal. So
they got shafted. I can't lie to you. There's no reward for being the number one overall seed. You get probably the hardest path in the entire playoff. I mean, talking about Penn State, looking at it from their perspective, they're probably thinking we just got gifted the semifinals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, okay, and then you have to play Georgia. But the first 2 games, you get to host, and then you get to host, and then if you win the game at home, you play Boise State, the G5 team. I mean, that is so favorable. They got very fortunate in that poll. That upper part of the bracket with Oregon, Texas, and Ohio State and Tennessee, that is insane to group all of those teams together. So, yes, I would 100% agree. I think reseeding is necessary. And the Scat Pack.
We
can't leave him out. How could I forget? But, I mean, I think that at bare minimum needs to be reseeded because, I mean, look, I'm saying this as a Georgia fan. Georgia got a very, very favorable pull in this bracket. So I could just be sitting here and saying, oh, it's perfectly fine. I love this. We got, I'm not going to say we got gifted the semifinals, but our Georgia's path to the semifinals is 100 times easier than Oregon's.
Yes.
Objectively speaking.
Yes.
So, and to be the undefeated 1 seed conference championship, undisputed number 1 team in the country and get that pull, I would be very upset as an Oregon fan. Obviously, they're good, so they should probably think, we can still do this and win those games. However, they're going to be tested to their limit.
So, what's step 2? If the logical step 1 is reseeding, what's next?
Ooh, I gotta take.
Please.
Let's hear
Fuck.
it.
I think as much as it pains me to say, you take away the auto bid. I think
Okay.
gifting the auto and when I say auto bid, I think I mean more so
The top
each
4.
conference champion gets a bye. That portion of the
Mhm.
auto bid, like I'm cool if you win your conference. Say
You're
like Clemson this year, like
Mhm.
they in all likelihood should not have been in that game to win their
Yeah.
conference, but they did
Yeah.
and they won.
Yep. Yep.
That should warrant a playoff spot. I don't think that earns them. I mean, if we're sitting here and Arizona State had lost, Clemson would have played themselves into a bye.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
Yep.
I don't think it would have warranted, Clemson winning the ACC in this hypothetical and Arizona State losing. I don't think that we should have given them a first round bye. I think seed the field as it is, give the top 4 buys, regardless of whether or not they win a conference. I think that's step 2.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
down
Yeah,
to
because
I
hear
you're,
mean,
something.
I like
I had,
that.
yeah, I had this conversation about conference champions getting an auto bid to begin with a South Carolina fan who 2 weeks ago beat Clemson in Clemson and then is turning around and sitting on the sidelines and watching Clemson, kick a last second field goal to beat SMU of all people in the ACC championship. They were gifted the ability to be there by Syracuse.
Yep.
Nothing that they did. So I understand the argument because his argument was that South Carolina is one of the 12 best teams in the country right now, at least better than Clemson. And I said, okay, yes, I see that argument, obviously, because they just played each other and South Carolina won on the road. However, if we're going with the deserving argument, Clemson
Mm,
did win the ACC. They only lost one ACC game. And one of
mhm.
their 3 losses was to Georgia. Back when Georgia was clicking on all cylinders offensively and we didn't have the most drops in FBS. So anyway, sorry.
Sore summers.
Uh yeah,
Yeah.
ouch. Um in Atlanta of all places.
Mm.
So I see his argument. However, it's like Clemson did win the ACC, so it's like, and you taking Clemson out of the playoff picture is pretty much not as bad as taking FSU out of the playoff picture last year. However, with a 12-team playoff, you're pretty much saying the entire ACC sucks ass. And that it should really just be like 5 teams from the SEC, 5 teams from the Big Ten, 1 team from the Big 12, Notre Dame, and Boise State. Like, I don't know.
Mhm.
Like the committee's just not going to do that.
Yeah.
So
I think, yeah.
yeah,
I think it's funny it comes back around. We were having the best versus most deserving conversations back in the 4-team era, and it continues. Um, I think in the perfect world, in a perfect world, the best teams would be the most deserving, right?
sure.
And in some cases, that's true. In cases like Oregon, they're the best, they're the most deserving, they did everything they could.
Yes.
But when you look at a team like South Carolina, are they better than some of the teams in the top 12? Probably. However, I think it's something about college football where, as Georgia fans, we've experienced, you can be, in your mind, one of the best teams in the country and deserve to be in the playoff. But there are things that you cannot do.
Yeah.
And in this current 12-team format, with how the committee values their rankings, you can't lose a third game without winning your conference championship. Something
I
has to
would.
give.
Yeah.
And you can think you're the best, one of the best 12 teams in the country, and you might be, but I don't know. I think, like I said before, in an ideal world, yeah, if you're the best, you should deserve it. But in some cases, you don't, and there's other teams that you can't fault for
Yeah.
the position that they're in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that, I mean, the answer is easy, right? Like Ole Miss, don't lose to Florida. Alabama, don't lose to Oklahoma. South Carolina,
Don't get
They're
fucked
tougher.
over by the refs.
I'll give it to them.
yeah,
I'll
don't
give it
get
to
fucked
them.
over by the refs.
Sometimes
Like,
you get a bad draw.
Yeah.
That I
Yeah.
mean, that's that. I think I'm the most sympathetic towards South Carolina,
yes,
just because
yeah,
I see them kind of like Arizona State, where they're getting hot at the right time. It's just that third loss, and I know it's you can argue the refs or whatever. It's too
tough.
much, but
Well,
it's tough. But that's the thing about college football. It
Yeah.
can be heartbreaking at times, and I
mean-
don't know how you get over that.
Yeah. Well, because the problem is there's 134, 135 FBS teams. There's no possible way for everybody to play each other. There's no possible way for every one of the Power 4 conferences to play a good enough amount of the other Power 4 opponents for us to actually be able to tell who's the best teams like there are in the NFL. There's only 32 teams in the NFL. They've also got 18 games. 18 games? 17 games?
17 games, 18
17.
weeks.
17 games, 18
Yeah.
weeks. You have a 17-game season where you're only playing 31 other opponents to
Yeah.
where, you're playing, well, whatever. We're not going to get into that. You have 17 opportunities to prove how good you are. In college football, you really only have 12 opportunities to prove that you are better than 120
Yeah. That's a
other
good point.
teams. So, that's where the committee has to come into play. And I also like emphasizing winning your conference, especially at the Power 4 level, because it's not feasible for Clemson to play the ACC schedule and then schedule I don't know, what would be a good number? 4 non-conference games against SEC opponents? That's just not how this works. That would be what, 9 ACC games and then 4 SEC opponents. That'd be 13 games. That's a lot to ask for a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds. So I don't know. There's got to be some way to kind of level the playing field, and it's not like we're having this argument. We're really having this argument over, okay, did 3 SEC teams make it or 4?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like the SEC got screwed over.
They
I
did.
mean, the SEC champion made it, the SEC runner-up made it, and the team that missed the SEC championship by a game made it. I think that's fair. Sorry,
It's
Alabama.
valid.
Sorry, Ole Miss. Sorry,
And I mean,
South Carolina. Your 3 losses were conference games. I'm sorry.
Beat the teams
Yeah,
you
and-
should beat.
yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to, and especially when you have Big Ten at-large bids, when you're talking about teams, 3 two-loss teams, 1 conference runner-up, and then 2 teams who had proven to be in the top 10, 15 all season in Indiana and Ohio State.
Yeah.
I mean, and you can sit here and argue all day that SEC competition is better and there's more talent, and that may or may not be true. However, I mean, you can also recruit at a higher level, and you can win the games in front of you. I mean, I understand that it may be unfair, but I mean, at that point, you have 3 losses on your schedule in SEC play. It's not an out of conference issue; it's a winning the games on your schedule issue.
Well, let's look at the teams from the Big Ten that made it. All right. Ohio State. Yes, they have 2 losses. Yes, one of them was really ugly against Michigan at home. We understand that. But they also took the number 1 Oregon Ducks, who are undefeated, by the way, down to the final seconds of the game and lost by a point. And as human beings, we also recognize the fact that Ohio State has one of the most talented rosters in the country. And they're the 8th seed.
I would argue of all time. They have not been shy about telling people how much they've spent in NIL on this roster. I believe the number is $15, $20 million.
It's generous.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you have 2-loss Penn State, who is, by the way, the Big Ten Conference runner-ups. One of their losses is to Oregon, who is undefeated, who the committee has said is the consensus number 1 team in America. And the other loss is by 1 possession to Ohio State, who has arguably formed the Avengers of a roster. And then you've got 1 loss Indiana, who, by the way, also lost to the Avengers at Ohio State. And I mean, and then
man,
you've got
it's tough.
undefeated Big Ten champion. That's only 4 representatives. Listen, the Big Ten had a great year. They had a true cream of the crop, and it worked out that way. The SEC cannibalized itself. we're really only arguing over one team.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. That's it. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, the discourse has been very interesting to see online. Obviously, a lot of SEC homers, and it's like, I don't know. I'm going to come back to it one more time, but I hate how it's become an out of conference game conversation. That doesn't make any sense. And also, I think what's getting lost in all of this is the strength of schedule is being brought up, where you're looking at resumes. Oh, we have this many wins against top 25 ranked teams, and that means
How many
something.
losses do you have
I was
against
gonna,
5
mhm.
teams?
And I
Like,
was about to go there with that because, okay, yeah, there's value in that, but also I think you're underestimating how quality losses and bad losses and how much of an impact that has. Because if you look at the Big Ten teams, like you were saying, Drew, I mean, as far as Penn State goes, you have two of the best losses in the country. You hadn't beat top 25 teams necessarily. I'll give them that. However, you have proven twice that you can stick with top 5 talent teams and hold it to a one possession game. So I know you don't have those wins, but you can also prove if those are really the true rankings for Oregon and Ohio State and that holds true.
Yep.
You deserve to be where you are. So
yeah, I agree. And I mean, and it's genuinely not because I hate Alabama, right? Listen, if Alabama if Alabama had lost to Georgia instead of Oklahoma by a touchdown, I think we're having a completely different conversation. And it's not only the fact they lost to Oklahoma, it's the manner in which they lost to Oklahoma. They did not score they did not they didn't I was about to say an offensive touchdown. They didn't score a touchdown. They have no idea what an Oklahoma end zone looks like. No clue.
and that's sad. That's the Oklahoma team who got beat up on by Texas, embarrassed in their
Absolutely
biggest rivalry game of
murdered
the
by
season.
Texas.
I
would
mean,
argue the worst Oklahoma team of the 21st century. It's up there. They don't
It's
have
up there.
they don't have a roster, or sorry, not a roster. They don't have a team that bad very often.
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, yes, Alabama, sorry. I said it again. I mean, I've said it before, say it again. Alabama, don't lose to Oklahoma. Ole Miss, don't lose to Florida. South Carolina, I'm sorry, guys.
tough
Down the
shit.
stretch, you did everything that you could, but you didn't put the pieces together until mid-October.
True.
Because like, if genuinely, if Ole Miss doesn't lose to Kentucky or Florida, Ole
Yeah,
Miss is
man.
in the playoffs. Alabama doesn't lose to Oklahoma. They're in the playoffs. And like we have 5 teams represented in the SEC. Like it's not that hard. Quit bitching. Move on. I'm gonna
Yeah.
stop talking now because I feel like I'm saying the same thing over
No,
and
you're
over
good.
again.
I just want to add one more thing, and I'll be done as well. I just want to say, as a Georgia fan, Georgia did it with the hardest schedule in the country.
Yep.
They had Georgia had 2 losses to Ole Miss and Alabama on the road. You didn't see them lose to Auburn or Mississippi State. They damn near lost the Kentucky game. Guess what? They didn't. That could have been Georgia's,
Oklahoma.
moment, like Oklahoma or even Kentucky for Ole Miss or Florida for Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, Georgia had a harder schedule than both of those teams. They lost a couple games, but they didn't lose an ugly one that they shouldn't have. I think Ole Miss was ugly enough, but Ole Miss was a top 15 team. So, at the end of the day, I don't have sympathy for that case. I don't have any, to be honest.
Great
boo-hoo,
team.
SEC only has 3 teams in the playoff.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously earlier in the season, we're talking about 5 or 6 teams, but I mean, like you said earlier, Drew, I believe, the SEC cannibalized themselves. This is like a former Pac-12 year where they just beat up on each other. And the SEC has not seen that in quite a few years. So, to the newer fans that are watching, yeah, maybe it seems a little weird. And, the SEC deserves more teams. But at the end of the day, I don't see any way in justifying that.
Great teams find a way to win the ugly ones. Right? Like, yeah, we went to the Bluegrass State and we won by a point. Hey, we won. We had more points than Kentucky did at the end of the game. We have an injured quarterback, an injured punter. We have an offensive line that's sewn together by bubblegum and rubber bands. But somehow we find a way to punch it in to finish the Texas game. You win the ugly ones.
Yep.
now I'm actually
Oop.
done. Oh Jesus!
Oh Lord!
Oh boy,
Lord.
Wow!
Wow.
that was crazy.
Fireworks!
Discord's telling me to shut up.
The Alabama deep state didn't like that one.
they're listening into this phone call. No, look, I think Alabama's a good football team. I think they're kind of like Georgia. They're polarizing.
Very hot and cold.
Very, very hot and cold. I think they could be a problem in the playoff, but I mean, at some point, deserving overrides best, and
Yes.
they have reached that. They had reached that point.
I also think when it was a 4-team playoff, I think the committee said, "Hey, we are going to reward the 4 best teams." Now that it's a 12-team, I think the tone has shifted.
You're talking about bubble teams here, guys. We're talking about number 12.
Yeah.
Like, and look, and it's just because it's Alabama. If this were any other team in the entire country, nobody would give a shit. I promise you. But just because Alabama has a down year in their first year with their new head coach, and they're coming off the Saban dynasty, and Alabama fans are still used to that standard. That
Preach, brother.
Yes, Lord.
Brother.
Yes,
I know
Lord.
I'm preaching to the choir. But seriously, we're talking about bubble teams here in a 12-team playoff. And people before were like, oh, well, it'll be fine. It's the 12th team, but it's Alabama, so it means something more.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
yes.
I don't know. I'm running out of things to say. I could talk for hours about this. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
It really boils down to the top 5 conference champions and then the 7 best teams in America, right? Because, like, the most deserving are classified under the conference champions. However, those are also arguably at least 3 of the best teams in the country. So you also have to throw in some most deserving into the other 7. Alabama wasn't it? All right. Noah, please say something.
What?
Please say something. I don't know. I feel like me
I
and
mean,
Brandon
y'all,
down
from
there
y'all's
the last
lips to
couple of
God's ears, y'all are. I mean, I agree with everything y'all are saying. I think, like Brandon said, if this was, I don't know, replace the Alabama logo on the helmets, which is coincidentally numbers, with South Carolina Gamecocks. Like, if those rankings, what was it now, 2-3 weeks ago, were flipped, we would not be having this conversation. It is open and shut, done. SMU's in the playoff. Easy.
I try to say this without any bias involved, because if you take the Alabama logo off and throw a G on there, and our losses are to Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, and who else did they lose to? Tennessee. Oh, yeah. If our losses are to Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and Oklahoma, I am thanking the sweet Jesus we're playing in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Thank God we're not going to the Birmingham Bowl or the Pop-Tart Bowl. No disrespect to the Pop-Tart Bowl, but you haven't responded to our DMs on TikTok.
Exactly.
So I'm a little
Come
salty.
on. Let's get to
What
the
are we
real
doing?
issue here.
This is what we've been meaning to talk about, actually.
Hurt people.
I don't know who sent the second one. I just noticed it a couple days ago. That's hilarious.
Noah's a thirsty bitch. It is what it is.
The Orange Bowl treated us so well.
Yeah, the Orange Bowl did treat us well. We got spoilt. But isn't that Miami and Iowa State?
I believe so.
The Pop-Tart Bowl? That sounds. We can save that for later. I know we were probably gonna. We're talking about doing this episode. Obviously, we don't have time for that, so we can save it for next week. A little bowl preview.
Yeah, let's give the Army Navy game some room to breathe. So
America's game. I like it.
Yeah.
Yes. Signed an extension with CBS today. That was announced.
Did they really?
I think another decade, 8 years, something like that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is. Yeah, but we can wrap with, if anybody has any thoughts on that game. I guess that would be our one piece of preview content for the week.
That's all
I mean,
I mean, it's the Army Navy game. Fun fact for anybody who's not a college football fan, it's always played this week, and it's the only game of the week. And the only interesting storyline, that's not necessarily true. The only regular season game that week. How about that?
True. Yes.
And Army won the American last week.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Well, that was the
storyline. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. So it doesn't really mean anything, with the placement of that. But the big storyline at the beginning of the season, I know Drew, you covered that, was that Army and Navy were both undefeated in the American, so they potentially would have met in the American Conference Championship the week before and then played the Army Navy game. So then it would have been a kind of funny. That was the biggest thing about this game. Obviously, I do believe each of the teams roll out special uniforms for this game, so
they are.
I'm sure Noah will cook something up for the TikTok. He's always on those uniform videos.
It's
so
gonna be the one I like more is the best, and the one
best.
I like less
That's
is
hilarious, and it's the only one in each video.
Yeah.
Please do that. That is hilarious.
Good luck choosing, man, because both of them brought some heat this year.
They always do. I love it. That's the best part about the game to me is that they have some sick uniforms and helmets even. So
teeny tiny bit of preview. Navy
Take it away, Drew.
Navy has fallen off a little bit down the stretch ever since they got absolutely dismantled by Notre Dame. Army didn't do well against Notre Dame, but at least they didn't turn the ball over 6 times. Army is currently a 6.5 point favorite. They open at 2.5, so Army's gotten a lot of the juice here lately. The over under is 39.5. I'm not gonna lie, unless I check the weather report and it's snowing, I'm hammering that over. Both of these offenses have found new life and have found explosiveness. But yes, by all means, Army should win this game. The uniforms are hot, and the only other piece I wanted to offer about this is that they do like a quote unquote prisoner exchange. I don't know the ins before the game. I don't know the ins and outs of this whole process, but I guess if you're a Navy student, you have the ability to attend the Army Academy for a semester or for a year, and then vice versa. If you're an Army student, you have the ability to attend the Navy Academy for a year, just to I don't really know the purpose. I don't know what
cross training.
Yeah, I guess it's cross training. It might.
I have no idea.
I'm not going to pretend.
I mean, hey.
I think it's really cool, but they take him out to midfield and they have a prisoner exchange this. If you were a fan of pageantry associated with college football, I know that's a big thing here in the South, especially in the SEC. This is the one game that I feel does it better than the SEC.
Yeah, there's a lot of lore around this game for sure. It's a fun one. It's traditionally one of the only games on this week, outside of some Division II bowl games. So
hey, man.
There is other football on. Can't say that, but traditionally it's the only game or one of the only games. So,
I just think it's crazy that the other game is the Salute to Veterans Bowl.
I was about to say that.
It seems kind of not very classy, guys. Come on now.
Yeah. Salute the veterans. By the way, we're taking your spotlight. I don't know how much they're actually going to take, but screw it. We're going to play on the same day.
They kick off at 9 p.m. So
obviously a West Coast destination.
I guess. I don't know.
Oh, I'm so excited for bowl season, dude.
I am too. We're getting geared up for bowl season. Yeah, I was going to say, for anybody who hasn't been around, we usually run a Bowl Mania. In years past, I forget how we've really done that content-wise. We're looking for a way to mix it up. In the past, we've gone game by game. And to be honest with you, I think that does a disservice to us and y'all because we have to pretend like we're talking about, we know what we're talking about in each and every one of these games. And then you have to listen to it if you're so kind as to tune in. So we're going to figure out a way to do that, but we're going to be running Bowl Mania. I wish we should reach out. I don't know how many people are active in our community, but a little sub Bowl Mania group
that would be sick.
Would go hard. So if anybody's watching to this point in the video and is interested, even if it's a few people, I know of a few people that would maybe be interested. So if you're
Bowl Mania.
We've had some discussions about potentially getting a sub Discord together. Maybe once that gets together, maybe I think this would be next year.
Yeah. Maybe I'm jumping the gun, but I think that's a cool future idea. But at least this year, at the very least, we're going to be doing it amongst the three of ourselves. So we'll take you along on that journey and see what that looks like in some kind of format that is more conducive to the audience's enjoyment.
Yeah. If you make it to this point of the video, we're going on almost an hour and a half now. If you comment the word Bowl Mania, I'll DM you personally, and we can get something going. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was about to be like, what is he gonna say?
No.
I'll
Nothing
give him
great.
all the
sliding
money
into
in
the
my
DM.
wallet right now.
Yeah, he's sliding into your DMs on his personal account, on his
All
burner.
$6. No,
Mhm.
but I mean, I think that if you like, I think we should reward them. Like, if they get to this point in the video, if you comment Bowl Mania, I'll find. I don't even know if there's a DM feature on YouTube, but if there is, I'll hit you up. We'll get something started. We'll send you
Absolutely.
the Bowl Mania link.
We'll send you
And
some leaks.
hey, yo,
Hey, yo, Bretman Murphy, where you
Sorry,
at?
Bretman Murphy.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
With that,
This has
Brandon,
gotten out
please
of
God,
hand.
take us
I can
home.
take us home.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself there. That would be on another website potentially. Anyways,
Down.
if hey now. Don't make me quit my day job. All right, we need to get out of here.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Anyways, yes, like Drew said, if you made it this point in the video, we love you very much for sticking around and supporting. You know, obviously our short form does a lot better these days, but this is truly what we're passionate about, is sitting around and talking ball for an hour and a half. We love to do it, so if you're here, a big shout out to you. And if you're new here, please do consider subscribing, sticking around. The season is just starting to get good. We have bowl games coming up. We're going to be covering next week. We have the first round of the playoff. We're covering it all. And there's a lot to be excited about and look forward to in college football. We have another month plus due to the new system. So more football, more meaningful football. And this is the peak of college football season, really. So we would love for you to stick around and experience it with us. I think it'd be a lot of fun and we would appreciate it. But yeah, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.